My husband Sean said, "I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself with my first love from high school." I told him, "That's nice. I hope you find what you're looking for." While he was gone, I packed my own bags and left. When he came back, his messages filled my phone. Turns out I found myself first. Sean stood in our bedroom doorway at exactly 4 p.m. that Sunday, delivering those words with the practiced ease of someone who'd rehearsed them in the bathroom mirror a dozen times. "I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself," he announced, his voice a little too steady. He paused for dramatic effect, letting the sentence hang in the air between us. "With Michelle, my first love from high school." I held his blue Oxford shirt in my hands, mid-fold, watching his face cycle through a Rolodex of emotions he couldn't quite control. There was the nervous anticipation of a kid asking for the car keys, a thick layer of guilt, and something underneath it all that looked dangerously close to relief. 9 years. That's how long I'd been folding this exact shirt every single Sunday, placing it third from the left in his oversized closet because that's where he expected it to be. 9 years of invisible, thankless routines that held our marriage together like carefully placed stitches nobody ever noticed until they started coming undone. The morning had started like every Sunday before it. My internal clock woke me at 6:30 a.m. No alarm needed. Sean would sleep until at least 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30 if he'd stayed up late playing video games. He always did on weekends. But his coffee, a medium roast from the local intelligentsia, needed to be ready by 8:15 when he'd stumble downstairs expecting it to materialize like magic. 2 sugars, a splash of cream, in his favorite Chicago Bears mug with the chipped handle he refused to throw away. It was a stupid, ugly mug, but it was his stupid, ugly mug, so it was my job to protect it. I moved through our kitchen in the pre-dawn darkness, my bare feet knowing every creak in the hardwood floorboards, instinctively avoiding the spot near the refrigerator that groaned if you stepped on it wrong. The coffee maker gurgled to life while I pulled ingredients for his breakfast from their designated spots in the pantry and fridge. Sean liked his eggs over easy, toast golden but not too crispy, and bacon arranged in a perfect crosshatch on his plate. These weren't requests he'd ever made out loud. They were preferences I'd absorbed through years of paying excruciating attention to his smallest reactions. The slight frown when the toast was a shade too dark, the way he'd push the eggs aside if the yolks were firm, the little sigh of contentment when everything was just right. By 7 a.m., I was back in our bedroom, sorting laundry with the robotic efficiency of someone who could do it blindfolded. Whites, darks, delicates. Each pile grew on our king-sized bed while Sean slept on, completely oblivious. His breathing was deep and even, occasionally punctuated by soft snores he insisted he didn't make. I studied him for a moment in the morning light filtering through our expensive Pottery Barn curtains, the way his hair stuck up on the left side, the new lines forming around his eyes, the slack expression that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. This was my favorite part of Sunday mornings, these quiet, stolen moments before the performance of our marriage began, before I had to laugh at the same jokes I'd heard 100 times, before I had to feign interest in his commentary about whatever game was on ESPN, before I had to be the version of Jane that made Sean's life run as smoothly as a well-oiled machine. The banana bread I'd baked yesterday still filled our Naperville house with its warm, sweet scent. Sean would have 2 thick slices with his breakfast, then completely forget I'd made it by lunchtime. These small acts of service had become reflexes, things I did without thinking, like breathing or blinking. He never thanked me for them anymore, hadn't in years, but I'd told myself that this was what a long-term marriage was about, the unspoken appreciation, the quiet, comfortable understanding between 2 people who'd built a life together, or rather, a life I had built for him. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Do you believe that a person's value is defined by how well they serve someone else? If you just felt a knot tighten in your stomach because that question hit a little too close to home, then you need to be here. Hit that subscribe button right now. Don't do it for me, do it for yourself, as a promise that you will never let anyone make you invisible. If you think that's too dramatic, go ahead and leave a comment explaining why being a doormat is a noble life goal. I'm waiting. Our monthly brunch with my best friend Queen and her husband George was at noon. I'd picked the restaurant in downtown Naperville, made the reservation a month ago, reminded Sean twice during the week, and once more this morning with a Post-it on his coffee mug. Queen had been my ride or die since we were roommates at the University of Illinois, the only person left who'd known me before I became Sean's wife. back when I had opinions that didn't require checking his face first to gauge his mood. At the restaurant, Sean ordered for me without even looking up from the menu. "She'll have the spinach salad, dressing on the side." He said it to the waiter, not to me, even though I'd been craving the French toast I'd seen at another table, dripping with maple syrup and berries. I just smiled and said nothing, a skill I'd perfected over the last 9 years. "So, I was dealing with this student, Marcus, who's been struggling with his reading comprehension," I started, excited to share a breakthrough I'd had with him on Friday at the elementary school where I taught. He finally— "Dude, did you see the Bears game last night?" Sean cut in, turning his entire body toward George. "That fourth quarter was insane. Unbelievable." I stopped mid-sentence, my words evaporating into the brunch time chatter. This was our rhythm. I'd start to share something from my world. He'd redirect the conversation to his, and I'd fade into the background noise. 20 minutes later, after an exhaustive play-by-play analysis of the game, Sean turned back to me as if remembering I existed. "Anyway, what were you saying about your student?" But the moment was gone, the passion had fizzled out. I summarized my 5-minute story of teaching triumph into 2 bland sentences, watching his eyes glaze over before he flagged down the waiter for another coffee. Queen followed me to the bathroom after our meals arrived. "Does he always do that?" she asked, fixing her lipstick in the mirror, her eyes sharp and angry on my behalf. "Do what?" I asked, pretending not to know. "Interrupt you. Dismiss you. Act like your stories are just the commercial breaks between his real conversations." I wanted to defend him, to make an excuse, to explain that Sean was just enthusiastic, that he didn't mean anything by it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself noticing, really noticing, how George had stood up when Queen left the table, how he'd asked her opinion on the wine, how he'd leaned in, genuinely interested, when she talked about a difficult client at her law firm. "He's just tired," I said finally, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. "Work's been stressful." Queen met my eyes in the mirror, her own gaze unwavering. "Jane, when's the last time he asked about your day and actually listened to the answer?" The question hung between us like an accusation. I couldn't remember. Back at home, Sean disappeared into his phone, sprawled on our crate barrel couch with the TV playing in the background. Every few minutes, he'd chuckle at something on his screen, occasionally angling it toward me to show me a meme I didn't get or a video I didn't find funny. "Remember Michelle Walsh?" he asked suddenly, shoving a Facebook photo in my face. A blonde woman smiled from a hiking trail in what looked like Colorado, all toned arms and a blindingly genuine smile. "From high school. Yeah, she just got divorced. Really found herself, you know? Started this whole journey of self-discovery. Hiking, meditation, all that stuff." He scrolled through more of her photos with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "We should get hiking boots," he said, not looking at me. "Start being more active." But I knew he meant himself. In 9 years of marriage, Sean had never once suggested we exercise together. Not until Michelle Walsh's divorce status update had apparently awakened some dormant, adventurous spirit within him. I started noticing other changes, too. The Crest white strips that appeared in our bathroom vanity. The bottle of expensive cologne I hadn't smelled since our early dating days. The gym membership he'd suddenly started using after 3 years of it being just another automatic monthly charge on our credit card. The way he'd started examining himself in mirrors, sucking in his stomach, running a hand through his thinning hair with a worried expression. By 3:30 p.m., I was back in our bedroom, folding the laundry that had been washed and dried while we were out. Sean's shirts required specific attention. Collar flat, sleeves crossed just so, third button fastened. My hands moved automatically through the familiar motions while my mind replayed Queen's question on a loop. When had I become so invisible in my own marriage? That's when Sean appeared in the doorway, and I knew, the way you know a storm is coming by the sudden drop in air pressure, that our carefully constructed Sunday routine was about to shatter. "I need to tell you something important, Jane." His voice carried a formal weight that made me look up from his shirt. He never called me Jane anymore. I was always Janie, babe, or just hey when he needed something from across the house. But Jane, that was reserved for serious conversations, the kind that changed things. "I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself," he said, and then added, as if it were a minor detail, "with Michelle, my first love from high school." The Oxford shirt in my hands went still. I waited for more. An explanation, an apology, a punchline, anything that would make this make sense. But he just stood there, shifting his weight like a teenager confessing he'd crashed the family car, waiting for my reaction to determine his next move. I looked down at his stupid blue shirt, smoothed a wrinkle that wasn't there, and heard myself speak with a voice so steady it surprised us both. "That's nice. I hope you find what you're looking for." Sean's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He had clearly rehearsed for a different scene. I could see it in the way his hands were balled into loose fists, ready to deflect tears or anger or the decorative vase on our dresser, but I just kept folding, creating a perfect sharp crease along the sleeve, my movements deliberate and calm. You're not upset?" he stammered. "Why would I be upset?" I placed his shirt on the neatly stacked pile on the bed. "You clearly need this. We all deserve to find ourselves, don't we?" The confusion on his face was a spectacle. Relief washed over him first, so potent it was almost comical, followed immediately by suspicion, as if my calm response was a trap he hadn't prepared for. Then came something else, something I couldn't quite place at first. Disappointment. He had wanted me to fight, to scream, to fall apart and prove how important he was to my world. "Janie, you're amazing." He rushed forward, kissing my forehead with more enthusiasm than he'd shown in months. He smelled like that new, expensive cologne. "This is why I married you. You get me." The words settled into my chest like stones. Not, "I love you," not, "You're the best thing that ever happened to me," just that I got him. I made his choices easier. I enabled his comfort. I was a feature in his life, like our dishwasher or the navigation system in his SUV. Useful, reliable, requiring minimal maintenance. "You should get proper hiking gear," I said, turning back to the laundry basket. "The weather in the Rockies can be unpredictable. Maybe those moisture-wicking shirts they sell at REI." "Right? Yes! I was thinking the same thing." His voice was high and manic, like a kid who'd just gotten away with raiding the cookie jar. "Michelle says the elevation can be a real killer if you're not prepared," Michelle says. Already she was the authority, the guru, the guide to his new, authentic life, a life he was planning to build on the foundation of the one I'd spent 9 years maintaining for him. The week that followed was a surreal performance. Sean took the entire week off work, something he'd never once done for our anniversary or my birthday, to prepare for his journey. Our credit card statements would later show the full extent of the damage: $300 hiking boots he'd wear exactly twice, $150 worth of meditation apps and audiobooks about finding your true self, and enough high-end athletic wear from Lululemon to outfit a small yoga studio. "Look at these reviews," he said, shoving his phone in my face over breakfast on Monday. The Colorado retreat looked like something out of a wellness magazine. Panoramic mountain views, luxury cabins, yoga platforms overlooking pristine valleys. "It's supposed to be transformative." "Transformative," I repeated, spreading jam on my toast with a perfectly steady hand. "That's wonderful, honey." The price at the bottom of the webpage made my stomach clench. $3,000 for 2 weeks. More than our mortgage. More than we'd spent on our 5th anniversary trip to Florida, which he'd complained was a waste of money for months afterward. "It's an investment," he said, reading my expression. "In myself, in us, in our future." He said this while actively planning a trip with another woman. The audacity was breathtaking. Wednesday evening, I helped him pack. It was almost peaceful, this careful folding and organizing, a routine I knew so well. Except this time, it was punctuated by constant mentions of Michelle's preferences. Michelle says we should pack light. Michelle thinks morning hikes are more spiritual. Michelle believes in doing a digital detox, so I might not have much phone service up there. Each mention of her name was a small, sharp cut, but I'd learned to stop feeling them individually. They just accumulated into a general numbness, like emotional Novocaine. Thursday morning, Queen insisted on coffee. She'd been texting me nonstop since Sunday, a relentless string of WTF and "Are you okay?" messages. We met at our usual spot, a small cafe in downtown Lisle where the corner booth was always unofficially ours. The moment we sat down, she grabbed my hand. "He's literally telling you he's going on a romantic getaway with another woman, Jane. You need to wake up." "It's a journey of self-discovery," I corrected, my voice flat, stirring sugar into my latte with mechanical precision. "Stop it. Just stop pretending this is normal." I'm supporting my husband's personal growth, I said, finally meeting her eyes with a smile that felt painted on my face. Isn't that what good wives are supposed to do? Queen studied my face, her expression shifting from concern to confusion, and then, finally, to a dawning understanding. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes widening. Jane Thompson, what are you planning? I'm planning to be the supportive wife Sean deserves, I said, putting a little too much emphasis on the word deserves. A slow, wicked smile spread across her face, the kind she used to get in college when she figured out a professor's trick question before anyone else. How long have you been planning this? She whispered. I don't know what you mean. Oh, cut the crap. I've known you for 15 years. I watched you plot your revenge on Chelsea Morrison for 3 months in sophomore year after she stole your thesis idea. This calm act, this Stepford wife routine, you're up to something, and it's going to be spectacular. I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. For the first time in a week, I felt a flicker of the old me, the organized, decisive woman who took no nonsense from anyone. The woman Queen had watched slowly disappear under layers of compromise and accommodation. She was finally waking up. That evening, I moved through our house with my phone, quietly documenting everything while Sean modeled his new hiking clothes in the mirror. The kitchen appliances I'd purchased with my teaching bonuses, the living room furniture bought with my grandmother's inheritance, the artwork on the walls, all gifts from my family. 9 years of accumulation, and I could trace almost every single valuable item back to my money, my family, my choices. That night, after Sean had fallen asleep, still wearing his new merino wool hiking socks, I sat in the living room with my laptop open. On the screen was the listing for the apartment I had secretly rented 3 months ago. It was a quiet backup plan I'd made, a bit of just-in-case insurance against the growing, undeniable distance in our marriage. It was a small one-bedroom place in a neighborhood far enough away that I wouldn't accidentally run into him at the grocery store. It was bright, with windows that actually opened, and a kitchen that got glorious morning sunlight. I'd been furnishing it slowly, piece by piece, telling Sean I was donating old items to Goodwill, or helping Queen redecorate. A chair here, a lamp there, books I claimed were going to my classroom library. It had been sitting there, waiting patiently, a life raft I'd been building while still trying to convince myself the ship wasn't sinking. Sean's announcement hadn't been a torpedo. It was just the final confirmation that the ship had gone under long ago. Is there a little voice in the back of your head telling you to prepare for the worst? That little whisper is your survival instinct. The people who ignore it are the ones who get left behind. The ones who listen are the ones who end up on top. Subscribing to this channel is like listening to that voice. It's your just-in-case plan for a boring afternoon. Don't ignore it. You might regret it when your friends are all talking about a story you missed. Friday morning arrived, bright and sunny, as if the universe was in on my secret. Sean was a hurricane of anticipation, double-checking his bags, arranging his new outfits, and buzzing with an energy I hadn't seen in years. I made his coffee one last time, 2 sugars, splash of cream, and watched him gulp it down without even tasting it. When the Uber pulled up, he grabbed his brand new bags with the eagerness of a kid heading off to summer camp. At the door, he paused, remembering he had a wife to say goodbye to. The kiss he placed on my forehead was weightless, a ghost of a touch. I'll come back renewed, he promised, his hand already on the doorknob. We'll rebuild our marriage, stronger than ever. The line sounded like something he'd memorized from one of his new self-help audiobooks. Before I could respond, his phone rang. Michelle's name flashed on the screen and his entire face transformed. Hey! Yeah, I'm just leaving now. His voice pitched higher with excitement as he walked toward the car, forgetting to even close the front door behind him. I shut it softly, listening to his animated conversation fade as the car pulled away. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It felt expectant, like the deep breath before the plunge. 20 minutes later, Queen's SUV pulled into the driveway with tactical precision. She emerged carrying cardboard boxes and 2 bottles of champagne. Liberation Day, she announced, pushing past me into the house. Before I could even ask, George's truck appeared, followed by a 15-foot U-Haul with my brother Denzel behind the wheel. He must have left his place in Milwaukee at 4 a.m. to get here. Denzel climbed out, wearing oversized sunglasses and a grin that I hadn't seen since we were kids, planning raids on our parents' hidden Christmas presents. You didn't think I'd miss this, did you? He pulled me into a hug that smelled like his signature cologne and the Red Bull he'd definitely chugged on the drive down I-94. I made a playlist. It's called Freedom Sounds Better. What I had imagined as a quiet, methodical move transformed into a full-blown celebration. George, an engineer, immediately took charge of logistics, measuring furniture and calculating truck space. Denzel hooked his phone up to the Sonos speakers, filling the house with a curated selection of empowerment anthems from Lizzo to Beyoncé. Queen stationed herself in the kitchen with a label maker and a Sharpie, creating increasingly creative categories. Kitchen gadgets he couldn't identify, books Sean pretended to read, and actual art versus sports crap. By noon, Tom popped the champagne he'd brought for this exact purpose, pouring it into my grandmother's crystal glasses that Sean had always wanted to sell. To Jane, he toasted, for finally choosing herself. Mrs. Chin from next door appeared around 12:30 with a tray of sandwiches and a knowing look. I saw your husband leave with fancy luggage for a hiking trip, she said, setting the food on our kitchen counter. My husband had the same luggage when he left me for his secretary 15 years ago. Men are not creative creatures. As we packed, the truth of my marriage became starkly visible in what belonged to whom. The coffee maker Sean bragged about to his friends, my money, the memory foam mattress topper that finally helped my back pain, my purchase after he'd declared it an unnecessary expense, the art, the china, the good silver, all mine from my family bought with my inheritance. Sean's contributions stood out in their stark, tasteless mediocrity. The giant, ugly recliner that didn't match anything, the ridiculously oversized TV, and the exercise bike that had held more laundry than it ever had him. 9 years, I said quietly, looking at how easily our life divided into mine and his, and everything worth keeping fits in one truck. By 3:00 p.m., the U-Haul was loaded. The house, his house now, looked strange and hollow, like a smile with missing teeth, but instead of sad, it felt honest. This was what Sean had contributed to our life together, empty space and ugly furniture. I stood at his sock drawer with a pen and a piece of my personal stationery, choosing my words carefully. The note needed to be perfect, not cruel, not overly dramatic, just true. Sean, I took your advice and went on a journey to find myself. Turns out, I was here all along, just buried under 9 years of folding your laundry and pretending to like football. The divorce papers are with your attorney. I hope Michelle helps you find whatever it is you're looking for. You two deserve each other. Jane. I folded it once and placed it between his new hiking socks and his old dress socks, where he'd only find it after the initial panic of discovering an empty house had passed. As our little convoy pulled away from his house, it felt like a funeral procession in reverse, driving toward a new life instead of away from one. It hits you then, doesn't it? The sheer, terrifying freedom of it all. It's a feeling most people are too scared to ever chase. They stay in their comfortable cages because the unknown is worse. If you're one of the brave ones, if you hear that call for something more, then you belong here with us. Hit subscribe and prove you're not afraid to be free. For those of you who think she's making a huge mistake, the comment section is open. Tell us all about the joys of staying in a miserable situation. We're all ears. We unpacked at my new apartment with the same choreographed efficiency. By early evening, the bones of my new life were in place. My grandmother's rocking chair fit perfectly by the window, angled to watch sunsets I'd actually have time to notice now. After everyone left, I stood alone in my new space, and that's when it hit me. A wave of grief so powerful I had to grab the kitchen counter for support. But it wasn't Sean I was mourning. I was grieving the woman who'd spent 9 years folding someone else's shirts with religious devotion. The woman who'd turned down a promotion to department head because Sean needed dinner on the table at 6:00 p.m. sharp. The woman who'd stopped painting because the spare room had to be his home office, then his gym, then just a storage space for exercise equipment he never used. I slid down the kitchen wall and sobbed for the woman I had been, not because I wanted her back, but because she deserved so much better than she'd known how to ask for. You didn't waste 9 years, Denzel told me later, having come back with takeout, finding me on the floor. You learned for 9 years. Now you know exactly who you don't want to be. That night, I slept diagonally across my new bed, sprawling into the space that had always been his. The silence wasn't lonely. It was full, like a blank canvas waiting for paint. The next 2 weeks were a blur of setting up my new life and blocking out the old one. Sean's emails started on Sunday, progressing from confusion, "Where are you?" to anger, "This is insane," to bargaining, "Please just call me." On Monday, he discovered social media, posting vague, passive-aggressive statuses about betrayal and life's unexpected challenges, clearly fishing for sympathy. But the real drama exploded on Tuesday. Queen forwarded me an Instagram story with the caption, "You need to see this." It was from Michelle Walsh. Looking nothing like her perfectly filtered photos, she was standing in what appeared to be the Colorado Retreats parking lot, her hair a mess, makeup smeared, and her expression murderous. "I need everyone to know," she announced to her phone's camera, her voice shaking with rage, "that Sean Mitchell is a lying, narcissistic sack of garbage who told me his marriage was over. He said his wife knew about us and supported this journey." The next clip showed her inside a hotel room, Sean's brand new hiking gear visible in the background. This pathological liar had me believing we were both divorced, both free. Then I called to add my name to the reservation, and guess what? It's under Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell. The final video was a masterpiece of petty revenge. Michelle stood by a rushing mountain creek, holding Sean's pristine $300 hiking boots. "You want to find yourself, Sean?" she screamed at the camera before launching the boots one after the other into the water. "Find yourself single!" The video went viral in our hometown circles. By Wednesday, George texted me from the airport. "Guess who I just picked up?" Sean had returned 11 days early from his transformative journey. He spent the entire ride ranting about ungrateful wives and psychotic ex-girlfriends, apparently believing I had completely overreacted to a simple vacation. The final text from George came at 3:47 p.m. "Just dropped him off. He's about to discover what finding yourself really costs." Mrs. Chin called me that evening, her voice a delicious mix of scandal and satisfaction. "Your husband sat on the front lawn crying like a baby," she reported, "screaming at his phone, pulling his hair. My grandson filmed it for his TikTok." The following days brought a parade of consequences. His mother, Patricia, called to tell me what an unforgivable monster I was. His brother, a lawyer, called to try and reason with me, but the real panic set in when Sean discovered the financial reality. I had meticulously withdrawn my 9 years of contributions from our joint checking account, leaving him with a grand total of $347.82. He also discovered he couldn't access my personal savings account, which held my grandmother's $50,000 inheritance. His emails, which my lawyer forwarded to me, became a desperate litany of questions from a 40-year-old man learning how to be an adult for the first time. What's the mortgage payment? When is the water bill due? What's our Netflix password? Then came the pièce de résistance. I had put all the utilities in my name years ago because his credit was so bad. When the final bills came due, I didn't transfer them. The power company shut off his service at 8 a.m. sharp. He posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, asking for recommendations for reasonable utility companies and complaining about predatory deposit requirements. Mrs. Chin herself commented, "Maybe if you paid your bills instead of running off with girlfriends, companies would trust you more." He was fired from his job for missing a huge presentation while in Colorado and for telling a major client that material success was meaningless compared to spiritual enlightenment. And Katie Walsh? She was now posting couples yoga photos with her new instructor boyfriend, #@authentic_love. The divorce mediation was a circus. Sean showed up with a PowerPoint presentation titled, "The Case for Reconciliation, an Analysis of Emotional Abandonment." He had graphs and charts detailing the irreparable harm my leaving had caused to his self-actualization process. My lawyer, Linda, just smiled and laid out 9 years of bank statements, work evaluations citing his absenteeism, and credit card bills for his spiritual journey charged to our joint account. The mediator recommended my original settlement offer stand, a clean split. He keeps the house and all its debt. I keep my savings and my new life. 6 months after that Sunday, we were in the courthouse, signing the final papers. Sean, who had spent 9 years borrowing my patience, my money, and my dreams, had to borrow a pen from his lawyer to sign away our marriage. I signed my name with the beautiful Mont Blanc pen my grandmother had given me, the smooth, deliberate strokes feeling like water finding its way home. A year later, life had settled into a rhythm I had chosen. My apartment was a home filled with books, art, and the perpetual smell of freshly baked bread. I had started painting again, my studio in the spare room bathed in north-facing light. That fall, I took a spontaneous trip to Paris with Denzel, just because we could. At a school fundraiser, I met a man named James, the widowed father of one of my most creative students. He remembered an offhand comment I'd made 3 months prior about loving lavender lattes and brought me one from a coffee truck. He listened when I spoke. He asked questions. He saw me. Last week, Queen forwarded me a Facebook post from Patricia Mitchell, asking for prayers for her son Sean, who was living in their basement, struggling to find his purpose after a traumatic abandonment. This afternoon, I sat in my sunny living room, grading student essays about their heroes. 3 of them had chosen me. James was in my kitchen, making his mother's secret recipe for pasta sauce, filling my space with smells that meant comfort without obligation. Sean had been right about one thing. We both needed to find ourselves. He found a 40-year-old man who mistook dependency for love and couldn't function without someone managing his life. And I found a woman who could stand so strongly on her own that when someone stood beside her, it was by choice, not necessity. A woman whose life was full, not because a man was in it, but because she had finally, after 9 long years, made room for herself. Some stories give you justice. Others give you a warning. This one did both. If you stayed until the very end, it's because a part of you recognized the truth in Jane's fight. Don't let that fire go out. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because the world is full of Seans, and we're here to tell the stories of every single Jane who gets away. If you don't subscribe, you'll miss the next story, and you might just miss the one that was meant for you. Your call.